And if you're returning, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be recapping the final episode of Archetypes for, I think this is a seasonal thing, so I think it will be coming back. If not, it was an amazing 12 episodes. Today we're going to be recapping episode 12, Man-ifesting, a Cultural Shift. This was with Trevor, Andy Cohen, and Judd Apatow. Let's get into it. Once again, thank you so much for clicking on my video. If you have not already, feel free to go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I post a new video. I want to say a huge hello to my Patreon supporters, to my friend circle, and I'm going to curtsy to the royal court. Thank you so much for being members and for all that you do. So today's episode of Archetypes was actually kind of sad. Now, I will say this. I don't care how I'm feeling. Whenever the episode opens and I hear that Catty, I be jamming. I literally be like,
I've enlisted some very...
I be getting down. So it was really sad, but I'm sure there'll be other seasons. They have so much to tackle. I don't see this being the end. And with it being so massively successful, I definitely think this will be coming back. If you know more about that, let me know in the comment section below. It is my belief that it will be coming back and my hope. So let me know. But this episode was with male guests. We have not had male guests, and that was by design, as Megan said. And she wanted to make sure that it was a safe space for women to express ourselves, to open up, and to shed light on what our experiences are like without being oppressed or quieted. And it's funny because until she said it, it hadn't really dawned on me that we don't really have a lot of spaces like that. So she starts with opening up about neuroplasticity, and she had Dr. Tara Brock, who's a psychologist, a meditation teacher, and she's an author, and she kind of just gave her expert definition of neuroplasticity. She said it describes our capacity to keep on learning and growing through our lifetime. And there's an understanding that neurons that fire together wire together. The more we have certain thoughts and feelings and behaviors, the more those neurological pathways are created and deepen. The more we practice healthy thinking and action, the more of a habit we create. We can literally change our brain in a more healthy and positive way, which is absolutely correct. They also use the quote that I actually use, where attention goes, energy flows. And I truly believe in doing every single thing with intention. Everything is by design, and you have to really consider what you're doing, what you're thinking about. We talked about this on my live yesterday about creating a world around you with pure intention, and setting your sights, setting your goals, and using your intention and your value system to create those things for yourself. But she talks about practicing mindfulness, and she says something that I found to be very profound. She says men and women can both change their way of thinking and behavior. And a lot of times what people will do is when they understand that they are part of an oppressive system, they'll pick a side. I'm either the oppressor or the oppressed. And they'll essentially adopt an accusation. And for the oppressor, a lot of times what that looks like is, well, I fit the description of the oppressor in this system, but I'm not an oppressor myself. So this whole idea must be bullshit. It's absolutely uncategorically untrue. Just because you fit the mold doesn't mean that you can't make progress in that space. And essentially that's what the idea of this episode is. Both sides need to work together to eliminate the barrier, to eliminate the oppressive system that we are all part of, whether we like it or not. Our individual choices don't essentially relieve us of being a part of the system, but our individual choices can really make a difference in whether the system exists at all. She also finished by quoting strong back and soft front. She said, that is something that brings the best out of all genders. You have to stand up for truths and be protective, simultaneously having an open and caring heart. And that is actually something I talked about with Megan, that she operates in a heart-centered manner with an open heart. And it can be tough to do that, but if you operate with an open heart, you have to have boundaries, you have to have self-respect, and you have to have integrity. And having both simultaneously will protect both sides to exist equally. So the first guest of this episode was Andy Cohen. Now, first of all, no one will ever say Andy Cohen better than Aiden, Phaedra Parks' son, Aiden. He go, Andy Cohen. He has the best. Every time I hear the name Andy Cohen, I think about him asking Phaedra, "Is that Andy Cohen?" during a reunion. But when I saw that both Judd Apatow and Andy Cohen were guests, I said, "Oh, Megan is challenging me personally, not everybody. Me." She said, "Sharion, you need to confront the things that you dislike, and you need to be able to see nuance." That's what I felt coming from her when I saw those guests. I said, okay, so she somehow figured out who I am in a sea of millions of fans. Okay, got it. She's also decided that she knows my opinion on these two men and has decided to challenge me to see nuance in a space where I don't really want to see it. And she wants me to be better for it. Okay, got it. So I guess since Mother said that's what we doing today. But just know I did this through gritted teeth. Now, if y'all, when I first tweeted about Meghan, when she married Prince Harry, I made a joke. I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything, but I made a joke on Twitter and I said, I really like Meghan, and the way I knew that I genuinely liked her and supported her was because she took my lifetime crush, and I was totally okay with it because I love her just as much. And it got a lot of engagement. Apparently, a lot of y'all feel that way. Like, the only reason you aren't heartbroken that Harry is off the market is because he married Meghan, who is also amazing and who you also love. And I thought that was so funny. So if I can show devotion there, I can definitely deal with having Andy on a podcast. Now, here's the thing. I don't dislike Andy. I just feel like I just feel like the way he treats housewives it's not consistent across the board. The way he treats certain housewives isn't consistent. And I've tried to find a pattern. Now, there are two indicators of times where he could have been a lot more fair. And there were allegations of racism, and it was really hard to dispel those because the way he treated the ladies of the Real Housewives of Atlanta. First of all, the cast trips at first, that was probably the biggest sign that this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But aside from that, on the Housewives of Atlanta, there was a reunion where Kim Zolciak made a few suspicious racist comments. Kim Zolciak has said a number of racist things. For the entire duration of the series, she's made very racist comments. But during this reunion, when she was in a bathroom, unfiltered, yelling at Andy, she said, "How many other white women come sit on this panel with all these black women? You couldn't get any of us to do it." Then she also went on to describe the ladies as like aggressive and acted like they piled on her, but she leaned very heavily into dog whistle language.
Yeah, I didn't like when Kim said on the show, I didn't want to go to Deshaun's barbecue and hang out with Nene and eat chicken. You know, I found that comment to be very suspect.
This house, it was in foreclosure, right?
Yep.
So Sweetie said this area, Candy, is...
What?
She was scaring me.
What? The mayor lives around the corner. What are you talking about?
Cascade, where Candy's new house is located, isn't the safest area. So when I got off the exit to go to Candy's house, I locked my doors.
You know, we have not found another white woman to sit on that mother because nobody's dumb enough to do that. Sherry, I'm so upset with you.
Like, put yourself in my shoes. If 5 African-American women just hammered.
Like, I couldn't even speak. Like, my mind's a whirlwind. This whole racism thing in this day and age is bullshit. Like, every one of those motherfuckers on that couch owe this world a apology for this racism shit. They already tried to claim that shit long ago, Sheree, as you know. Nobody really bought into it because the social media wasn't there and racism wasn't all that real.
particularly with the narrative that Kim was so helpless, such a helpless damsel in distress with no ability to defend herself. And that's just BS.
It's less problematic when the person is good at kind of taking up for themselves.
Yeah.
And Kim was not having an easy time with her
She
words.
could not defend
herself. She was making it harder for herself. I don't like it because it's a gang up.
Yes, most of the girls were totally, completely against Kim, but Kim has clearly done her fair share of dirt.
We're accused of something serious, so I think you probably have something to say about it. The Roaches were equated with racism.
You're reaching, and so are you.
Okay.
It also came out that her husband had a gun on set with him, allegedly. And the way Andy handled it in the moment was essentially fine. But he went on a radio show later and he essentially backed her up and made it sound like the black castmates were aggressive and piling on her. And he completely pacified her, even though she had been extremely antagonistic and all of them were holding each other accountable for the things they did. He backed her up in the sentiment that these black women were coming down on her disproportionately and piling up on her. Now, if you've ever watched Housewives, you know Kim Zolciak is not the protagonist. She has always been an antagonist, no matter what. And that was a moment for me with Andy. Also, the way he treated Portia at first, I was not a fan. Whether you think someone is the smartest person in the world or not, you treat everyone with respect. And I always felt like he was really sarcastic with her in a way that he wasn't with the other ladies because he thought she was dumb. Lo and behold, she is not. And then the situation with Garcelle Bouvet at the most recent reunion. I don't watch Housewives anymore at all, but I saw that reunion clip and then I went back and watched the reunion itself to make sure I understood the context and the way that he completely dismissed her experiences with racism and moved on to the white ladies and started essentially ignoring her, and she sat there in silence and cried. I wanted every black person on Bravo as a cast member to quit. Go find another network to work with. Casting directors from other networks, go poach all the black Bravo celebrities and move them over to your network. And I've talked about this before, how I don't really feel it for Andy, but this episode, I just kind of put that aside and I just listened, because just because someone is not that great in one area does not mean that they have nothing to offer across the board. And he is very successful, and his franchise is wildly successful amongst women. So I found that there were a number of things that we were in agreement on during this episode, and there were a number of things that we were not. He made this comment about the housewives, and he used the phrase boobs, as in breast. Andy has a lot of misogynistic qualities. I'm sorry, he has a lot of misogynism still tussling up in there. But he went on to say, he went on to ask Megan, who hemmed his ass up in a funny way. It wasn't serious, but she said that she'd been trying to get on Watch What Happens Live a long time ago, and she kind of essentially got the brush off. And then she also said that when she met him twice, he was polite, but he was not welcoming, essentially. She didn't say that, but what she described was not welcoming. And he was just like, oh my God. He was like super cool about it. But this is what I say, be nice to everybody, because one day they may be somebody that you want to know. And honestly, not because of that reason, but that's a good reason, but because you should be nice to people. But Megan actually said she no longer watches The Housewives. She used to be a fan, but she is no longer a fan. And the reason she gave was super sweet, because Megan is a very nice person and Megan is not in the business of tearing people down. But the reason she gave was, she said when she changed her life, which was when she entered the royal family, she had so much going on that she really didn't need the additional dramatic stimuli. Beautiful answer, very diplomatic. When I tell you she is diplomatic, it is in her blood. She knows how to say what she needs to say, when she needs to say it, how she needs to say it. Beautiful answer. But Megan, you can be honest, this shit got toxic. It is toxic, and it sits on the brain, and it's messy. And I talked about it in my live yesterday about I had to stop watching certain types of comments or certain types of entertainment because I realized that it was going home with me essentially. Like I would be thinking about it. I would build an opinion about it. Essentially, I would build an argument on behalf of some of my favorites. I would have a strong opinions. And I'm like, yeah, this should not be evoking strong opinions. This is trash TV. So Megan said, she kind of made this comment that alluded to the housewives essentially, because she brought up the bimbo episode of Archetypes where she spoke with Paris Hilton, and she said that they let Paris know that we casted you as the dumb blonde. So they had an archetype and they needed to cast to align with that archetype, and they needed them to play the role. So Megan said, do you feel that that's what goes on with housewives? And Andy said no, but I actually beg to differ. He combated, or he backed up his no with the fact that the show is authentic. But Megan actually didn't question authenticity, because we know these women can only, you can only fake so much. You can set people up, but essentially what they do is what they do. And that is the authenticity. So no one ever said it was inauthentic. And that's not what Megan said. She said, do you feel like you cast to align with certain archetypes about women that are negative? He said no and said the show is authentic, and he didn't answer the question. And it was great for her to let his answer sit there, because when I listened to that, I said, so you saying, yeah, you do cast to fit a certain archetype, but then you let them have at it, which is why you cast certain types of people to work together. So the answer is yes. I don't think he really understood the question. I do think he understood the question. I think he didn't want to answer it. But he talked to her about Real Housewives of Montecito. I thought that was a very funny running joke, and I'm so glad at the end she was like, okay, again, I am not going to be on any Real Housewives. I'm not going to be on reality TV, because although we knew it was a joke, people will be like, Megan's going to be on reality TV. You know how they like to do, because they're freaking weirdos. But again, the ladies were being authentic, but it came up about the housewives' relationship to the B word. I found this to be quite intriguing. And he said at first the B word was banned from the intro because all of the female staff at Bravo did not want the intro to the show to entail the B word. But there were certain cast members who wanted to use it, repurpose it, and use it in a positive way. And I guess I essentially understand that. Now, if you want to use it in like, I'm the baddest bee, okay, that's one thing, but you just got to be careful with that kind of thing. But I can kind of see both sides of it, same as I did when they had the B word episode. I can understand both sides. I have my own opinion. I'm not a fan of the B word, but I will use it at times, like, bitch, are you crazy? Like, I'll say little things like that, but I will not call you the B word. That is not going to come out of my mouth. Megan asked, what role do you feel you have played into the archetypes of women that are negative, and how that has an effect on culture? And he essentially said that Gloria Steinem came on his show, and she called the Real Housewives a minstrel show, and she said it was awful. She didn't like it, and she didn't agree with it, and she didn't feel like it was real. Very inauthentic. And basically he said, but again, Roxanne Gay came on and said she loved it. She said she felt like it was showing authentic women being different versions of themselves, different types of women that are not fitting any particular mold, and everyone gets represented. Essentially, the show is creating conversations, and strong women have strong opinions, and they all alter in their views on the show. Now, I will say this. I don't particularly dislike Housewives. I don't have an opinion on it anymore. I don't watch it, but that doesn't mean I think it's all bad. I think it has a lot of good. One of the best things about the show is that it does show women of different ages still living and thriving in life, because sometimes that is not the case. Like a lot of the shows, like Modern Family, when Claire Dunphy, the lady who plays Claire Dunphy, was cast, she said at first she didn't want to do the show because she assumed being the mom of the family, she was going to be the finger wagger. While the rest of the family was going to get to go out and do all these adventurous things, she would be the one stuck at home going, not too far. And she didn't want to be the show's moral compass. She wanted to be a participant in every facet of it. And we don't see a lot of characters that get to be part of the shenanigans, a lot of female characters that get to be part of the shenanigans. You get to see so many different types of women. You get to see strong, hardworking women. You get to see single women. You get to see loving mothers and employees and bosses and managers and friends and relationships build, die, grow, what have you. So you do get to see the full gamut of a lot of different types of female identities, but it does not box us in. Now, that I will say. However, the idea of Real Housewives is a good deliverer, and the deliverables of a housewife on that show is that you have to interact in a way that is memorable, and often memorable lends itself to argumentative. It lends itself to controversial, to arguing, to mess. And one of the things that I like about Kandi is she gets how to bring content without always putting herself at the center of drama. Her content is positive. What I wish more women would do on the show is recognize that blazed trail and do other things outside of babies, marriage, drama. You can do other things. Build a business. Show us your charities. I really thought that Portia was going to bring a huge, charitable front for the show with Hosea Feed the Homeless. When she first came on, it was a talking point, but she never dug in. I wanted to see what it's like to run a charity. I wanted to see the impact that made for Black people. I wanted to see those things. I wanted to feel like I was part of that from the perspective of the show, and how with that mindset and that focus, interacted with the other ladies. That was a missed opportunity. She leaned into the drama as well. Women of a certain age are represented. Cynthia was 50 Cent, and it wasn't like you're turning 50. They celebrate age and growth, and I love that. So I did something fun, because when Andy said no, he does not cast for certain archetypes, I said bullshit. And so I took since Real Housewives of Atlanta is my favorite franchise, I took the episodes of Archetypes, the show, the podcast, and I named each Real Housewives of Atlanta in each category where I thought they fit. And I feel personally that I nailed it on the head, but if you have done the same thing or want to do the same thing, let me know in the comment section who you think fits each archetype from your favorite franchise. Now, my favorite is Atlanta. Early Orange County cannot be beat, except for by early Atlanta. And Real Housewives of Atlanta is the best franchise of all time. So I pulled each archetype and I named a Real Housewives of Atlanta cast member of where I think they got this trope from. Of course, even though she is my favorite housewife of all time, angry Black woman definitely has to go to Nene. They really put her in positions to show that side of her. And they really leaned into that in the way they depicted her. Bimbo, I feel like they casted Portia and Kim Zolciak to play that role. The bitch, Sheree. They casted Sheree to be the bitch. She threw shade. She was very subtle. She's always composed, but she has a visceral tongue. The good wife, bad wife trope, Phaedra. At first, I didn't feel this way, and then when I gave it thought, I was like, oh, absolutely. Because Phaedra, if you remember in the beginning, she was cast as a wife and mom with a controversial past and an attorney. She was an attorney. But if you remember, when she first came on the show, a part of her storyline was one, that she was a liar. And she lied about her pregnancy due date. And it was a lot of suspicion about whether her or not her husband was her baby's father. And then two, she talked about spanking her child and standing by that. And that was like a big deal. Like, people had a real reaction to that. People called her a bad mom. Also, she didn't immediately connect to her maternal side. When she had her son, she was very disconnected. It took a minute. And we saw that. If you can recall, when they showed her baby, she was like, ew, get the goo off. Like, there was no excitement. And then she even said, I'm just concerned that when I have a baby, I'm going to be chained to this baby, and I'm going to have to try to figure out my life around this baby. It was not met with joy. at first, but she definitely came into her own. Crazy Kenya, she played into that shit and she nailed it. I like Kenya, but the singleton Marlo, we have never seen Marlo with a man on the show, and when she was on the show with a man, the next episode she wasn't. So that football player, the one that dated Nene too, the one that said it's a done dollar, and I now always say it's a done dollar when I don't want to do something. And my husband's like, where the heck did you get that from? Housewives. The diva Cynthia Bailey is amazing. She is my second favorite housewife. Her and Portia are tied for 2. And then Ambition, who do you think? Candy. You can't pick someone else. So then we move on to Judd Apatow. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I do not like Judd Apatow. And you know why. I don't like Judd Apatow because when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, whether you like that or don't, that is not the question here. Keep in mind, we gotta stay on the topic at hand. Whether or not you agreed with Will is not what we're talking about. When Will slapped Chris Rock, whether you agree or not is not necessary to tell me. I don't give a shit. But when he slapped him, not punched, not stabbed, not choked, not shot, when he slapped this man, Judd Apatow tweeted that he could have killed Chris Rock. He completely exaggerated it to try to make Will Smith seem unhinged, deranged, and this monster. He definitely leaned into the scary black man archetype. And I did not respect that from Judd Apatow. And he made it worse. And a number of people actually stopped liking Judd Apatow at that time. That was me. But for the sake of the show, I listened. And I also knew he had a little social credit with me because I love Leslie Mann. And I love Maude Apatow. So I forgave him. But let me just tell you this. Will Smith could not have killed Chris Rock with a slap. If that were the case, everybody would have slapped Chris Rock. Now, Judd Apatow has he's made some of my favorite movies. I don't like him, but boy is he funny. Knocked Up and 40-Year-Old Virgin are both in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Knocked Up is such an amazing movie. It is hilarious on so many levels. And Katherine Heigl, bring her back, Hollywood. I love Katherine. But his movies often portrayed women with the B word as a B word archetype. Like he cast it for that archetype, that women are the moral compass, that are mean and visceral. And in the early days, women were often seen as the B word, judgmental, mean, rude, etc. Scared of growing old, things like that. And as he has grown and become more enlightened, so has his comedy, and he has leaned less into that trope with women, and he showed more dynamic women in the way that he showed in Bridesmaids, which is also in my top 10 comedies of all time, not top 10 movies of all time. And so he talked about that journey of working with his wife a lot and bringing in her perspective so that the female characters in his movies were nuanced. And his wife was an absolute gem in 40-Year-Old Virgin. She had 20 minutes of screen time and she said, watch what I do with it. But anyway, actually it was 10 minutes. She had 10 minutes of screen time and she made use of them. So again, he's the husband of Leslie Mann, and Megan recounted meeting Leslie Mann, and she raved about how sweet and kind Leslie Mann was to her. And he confirmed that. He was like, yep, that's her. She is definitely like that. I love to hear a man talk about his wife, but in a positive way. But again, that reiterates my point. Be nice to people, because one day they could be a duchess. And so for my favorite guest of the show, she had Trevor Noah. Now, I know Trevor Noah from The Daily Show and from Instagram because I follow all his socials. And I like him on The Daily Show. I was really sad to hear that he was leaving. But he had a lot of really, really eye-opening things to say. I felt like he had been waiting for this conversation for a very long time, in a good way. So he talked about how he observed how black women are the most oppressed women. So the show is Welcome to All Women. It's about all women. It's hosted by a biracial woman. So it's obviously not exclusive to only black women, but something that Trevor Noah took time to mention was how black women are the most oppressed. And he kind of talked about this little story or quote that he heard that says, both black men and black women walk through the world and stones are thrown at them. Then they go home and stones are thrown at her. And that is very true. When y'all have those conversations on Twitter and those trending conversations about women and what women need to do, and do women deserve $200 dates, and should a woman make her man's plate? Let me tell you this, as a married black woman, it does not annoy me because y'all just stupid, but when you bring that shit to me, you will get your feelings hurt. I have had 2 different people make comments that I do not make my man's plate, and one of which I didn't even have to say anything. My husband was like, the fuck, I got 2 hands, and if anything, I should be making her plate. She does a lot for me. But yes, just because I have a vagina does not make me your built-in servant. I hate that. I got married for a partnership, not to be anybody's slave. I did not get married so that my father could trade me for a few cows, goats, and a little bit of land. I got married because it was a choice. I chose my husband and he chose me, and we equally entered into our marriage. Neither of us are inferior. We are both 2 superior beings who came together to make a bomb-ass marriage, and I do not have to be a servant in order to enjoy my life. I've also had people, when I took a break from corporate, say things like, well, you should ask your husband to pay you to clean the house instead of having a maid. What am I do? Pay myself? Honey, our money is our money. You have no idea not only what I'm bringing in, but you don't know how our bills work, and why would my husband ever treat me like a maid? Now, first of all, the people who clean my home, they are treated very well. They make good money. They're treated very well, and we adore them. But it is a business, and we treat them like the business owners and the business personnel that they are. We do not treat them like servants. Like, they come here, they do a service, and they leave. Same as the maintenance man, same as the plumber. Like, that's just what they do. But can you believe I'm a whole ass married woman of 6 years, and someone actually told me that I should ask my husband to pay me to clean my own house? Child, toxic people. Okay, so I love that Trevor Noah mentioned that, because there is this uneven, extremely imbalanced way that people treat wives versus husbands. He also used the building the house analogy. So we're going to get in that. So he talked about how sometimes people don't do things because they're malicious. Sometimes it's the fact that they aren't enlightened, and they create and build things from their own perspective based on their own individual needs and the needs of those who are like them. It's not malicious, it's ignorant. And until he's enlightened, then he will do it a certain way because he thinks that's best until he knows better. When you know better, you do better. I say that all the time. But something else he said was, it's the same as building a house. When I'm building a house, to get from one floor to the other, I'm going to build stairs because that's what I would need to get to the stairs. But if I don't have 2 working legs, that is not what would come natural to me. And until I'm enlightened about that and I'm given the idea to do something different, I'm going to do it the way I've always done it. It's the same thing with these these structures and these organizations and these systems that we've created. We have to enlighten each other and continue to build better. That was such a beautifully stated segment. I love that he said that. I completely agree. And the fact that this is the first episode with men, I thought that was the perfect sentiment to highlight this episode, the grand finale. So I agree with that. I also think, yes, we need to enlighten each other. We need to know better. We need to do better. And that is a person-to-person thing that has nothing to do with gender. I also think we have to challenge ourselves to see outside of our own experience and our own existence. We have to push ourselves to be more empathetic to others and to be enlightened. We have to look for that enlightenment. We have to look for things that are not like us. That's why I always say I watch shows, listen to music, and read books that are created by people who do not look like me, who don't have my same experience, who aren't from the South, who aren't black, who weren't born in Germany, who aren't married, who aren't straight, who aren't cisgendered, who don't have a niece and nephew, who don't live in Florida, who have not traveled. I look at things from people who are different than me. A lot of times I'll read about someone and then I'll look at their bio and I'm like, oh, no wonder I aligned with it. We have a very similar past. But then I'll go look at someone else and who has nothing to do with me, and I learn a lot. it's great when someone can view you and you can feel seen and you can feel like you're validated in some beliefs and thoughts and all of that. It's an incredible thing when you can learn something new outside of what's in your vision and in your wheelhouse. He also talked about how women are often not given the credit due, especially when it comes to social change and governmental and political change. He said Martin Luther King Jr. has his own day. He's widely hailed as this change maker, this important person in American history and in world history, and how Coretta Scott King is essentially an afterthought and a footnote in his bio. And that isn't fair, because a lot of the ideals, a lot of the change, a lot of the things that Martin Luther King hung his hat on, Coretta Scott King was not only right there beside him, but she was a leader in her own right, and she does not get the just due that she deserves. And I absolutely agree. Same thing with Malcolm X. So not lastly, but a big part that stood out to me was that I had no idea that Trevor Noah's mother was shot by her ex-husband after she remarried. Not his dad, his stepdad shot her after she remarried. And he said that was a moment where he learned a lot, because he was filled with hatred and anger. Let me tell you this: you shoot my mama, you better be looking for me. You better hope the cops find you before I do. Don't shoot my mama. But he said that when he was filled with hatred, she could tell, and she told him, don't hate him for doing this, but rather pity him, because he too is a victim in his own way of a world that was thrust upon him. It has thrust upon him an idea of masculinity that he has subscribed to. And then he said, as for myself, I do not want to imbue myself with a hatred that only I will carry. Now, I say that all the time. Do not have hatred for people. Do not have resentment for people, because you will literally kill yourself and die. Grudges do kill you. Grudges kill you. Grudges kill you. Do not take a grudge. Do not hold a grudge. This is your toxicity. I will not carry it for you. I'm going to give you your bullshit back. And the reason I say that is because you'll be sitting there filled with resentment and stress and anger and letting that poison seep into your body, and they will be living their life happy and free. If you know that they were trash to you, they are trash to others, and eventually they'll reap what they sow. So do not carry a torch for someone else, or you will burn your damn hand. So one of the things about resentment I used to say all the time, because y'all know I used to carry a grudge. But one of the things I had to learn was literally resentment is drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. So he also went on to say the current idea of masculinity limits men as well. By dispelling these archetypes and these stereotypes about women, and by treating women with more equality, that helps everybody, not just women. The idea of the head of household is so archaic and causes way more stress for men, because they're trying to appear more manly in one way and they're deluding themselves in another, as well as their household. Megan asked a great question. She said, what is the role for men to play, specifically men in media, to help change some of these conversations about women and equality? He said, men have to grow more comfortable in our vulnerability. It's limiting, and we are taught to be stoic and aggressive, and it is very limiting to us. He also said that if we think we're only going to cry when our team loses the Super Bowl, then that is not enough. That is so true. I hate the term old dogs can't learn new tricks. Once you know better, you do better. Don't you want to do better? Don't you want to be better? And misogyny lends itself heavily to the current idea of masculinity. A lot of men feel like being men means favoring things that they see as masculine, and that's limiting to you. Also, if you are over the age of 35, I'll give you also 35. If you're over the age of 35 and you're still thinking that men don't cry and men aren't supposed to be vulnerable and men aren't supposed to be nurturers, grow your ass up. Grow up. Grow up. I know men who still say women are the nurturers. That is not true. As a parent, as a husband, as a person, you should be balanced. It's all about balanced, not based on gender. Those same people are also very misogynistic. I know people who will literally say, I'm closer to my sons because I'm a man, which makes no sense. No sense. They're all your children. You should still be getting to know them. You should still be building relationships. You should still be building connections. Having a penis does not mean that you will immediately connect with this person, or that you should only focus on your relationship with that person. What is this? Girls got cooties? Grow your ass up. Anyway. He also said, changing the workplace to suit the needs of everyone is a must. I agree. You want to know why work from home was so successful? Because finally people could live a life that was balanced. They were able to be home with their kids. They were able to eat at times that made sense for them. They were able to eat and process and digest food uninterrupted. They were able to exist in a space where they were comfortable and executing at a high level. Those who wanted people to go back into the office were assholes, and they were on a power trip. So lastly, Megan said, she asked, instead of doing the 3 words of who you were as a child and who you are now, she asked this really cool question. She said, name one stereotype that you believed about women when you were a young boy, and how has that changed since you become a grown man? And Andy's word was dramatic. And this fool said he still believes that. Remember when I said Andy is misogynistic? He cleaned it up with this little answer, because women feel more and women express themselves more. They're socialized to express themselves. Yes, we heard all that, but at the end of the day, you still said you stood by a dumbass stereotype and that you no longer believe, but you still believe it. You deciding to stay ignorant. What is Mother Megan trying to tell you? Grow up, Andy. And here's the thing. Dramatic is not a compliment. That doesn't mean we feel more or we express ourselves more. Dramatic is dismissive. Dramatic means dramatizing a natural emotion, meaning putting 20 on 10. Being dramatic means that you are doing more than necessary to exercise your point. That's not a good thing. Expressive would have been the way to process that. I used to think women were dramatic, but now I just see women as expressive and in tune with their emotions. That is not the same thing as dramatic. Dramatic is still very dismissive. Judd Apatow said he now sees women as more complicated and nuanced. Great. Do you see the situation with Will Smith as nuanced? And do you see why we hate your ass, Judd? And then lastly, Trevor Noah. He had the best answer. He was very honest. He said, women, when I was a kid, I used to think women were an idea as opposed to human beings. If I tell you that I know that a lot of men still think this way, listen to what he said. He said, he felt like women existed to be pursued and men were the ones with the agency. He felt like a woman was only there to be engaged and activated by the pursuit of a man, but she didn't have agency to engage or embark on her own journey alone. And that is so true. He basically was like, women were more of like a figment of my imagination until I activated them and made them a real person. And he said he linked that to like music and music videos and his favorite content, how men would pursue women, and it wasn't based on the woman to choose whether or not she liked the man. It was based on how hard the man worked, whether or not he got the woman. So centering men in the interaction with women, never once considering the woman's needs, wants, ambitions, or simple ability to choose. I want every single man I know to listen to this episode and take it in. Dispel the bullshit you believe about women, because we are real people. Stop reducing people to their gender. You know, people will jump through hoops to maintain their misogynistic view, but you too can grow and change, create new neural pathways. I love this episode. This is my second favorite episode. And I thought Megan nailed it. She even said by continuing these conversations, even as a woman, she's learning more. Again, both sides are learning so much from Archetypes. I loved this episode. I thought it was very enlightening. I like that she used men, but you know what? When I heard that she said she was going to have men, I really thought Prince Harry was going to be a surprise speaker on here. I really did. I was like, oh, is Harry going to be here? But that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed this episode recap and the episode of Archetypes. I'm really sad it's going away, but we have a lot of new content coming down the pipeline. We're going to fill the spot here on Tuesday nights, but I'll be glad when it comes back. I really love this podcast. I love Megan's content. We have a lot coming up too from the Sussexes, so we're gonna have a really fun couple of weeks. So that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, if you have, go ahead and hit that like button, leave me a comment, and if you are not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe and hit that join button to become a member. And then if you're on my Patreon, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.